So today I'm going to show you how to start out making components for your magazine picture frame made out of pieces that are cut up strips from magazine. You'll see that you have pieces that are 2-inch, and you also can use pieces that are 1-inch wide. What's going to happen is that when you fold up the 2-inch, it's going to become a thicker piece. So it's going to be easier to use in different components than the other. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to make some pieces like this. So the best way to do that, I put a piece of paper down so that I don't get glue all over my table surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crease in half, and it doesn't have to be perfect, my 1-inch strip, and I'm going to add a little bit of glue. I'm just using like a white Elmer's glue, but very sparingly, not a lot. Just a kind of like barely pushing it out. And then I'm going to push that together and seal it up. So this is going to make a strip, but it's going to be a lot more flexible than the one I'm going to make with this because it's thicker. So for the 2-inch strip, I'm going to fold it in half and crease that so I can see that crease. And then I'm going to fold each side in towards the center crease. All right, and then I'm going to open it up and lay some glue on all of the area. But again, you're not squishing a ton out. You can even use a glue stick for this. I think I prefer what I've been using with this. So then you're going to fold it back together and seal that down. Seal that towards the center. Now we're going to take a little bit more bead of glue here. I'm just going to put it on one side and then close that up. So now I have two different types of strips. This one is a lot more flexible than this one. You can kind of see how this bends a lot easier. Okay, but if I wanted to build something up like a spiral, it would take a lot more of the thinner ones to do that. Okay, and the thicker ones are going to help me build that up more so and more quickly. Okay, so now I have made a bunch of the 2-inch strips, the thicker ones, and I'm going to show you how to make a spiral. You can go as large as you want or as small as you want with this. It's just a matter of building it up as you go. So we're going to leave that on the side and start one from the center. So I'm going to take a strip, and sometimes they're a little stiff, so, you know, especially like just to get it curling a little bit, just kind of like squish it with your hands. I made these the other day, so they're good and dry. When they're damp from just making them, they're a little bit easier to bend. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my glue and run it along that whole inside curl that I started, and I'm just going to kind of start it curling up. And the first one is kind of the hardest to get it going because you kind of want it to be a little bit tight in the center. So I'm just rolling that up. And the glue is going to take a little bit time to set, but once you get it started, it's going to work a little bit easier. Okay, so we're just rolling that piece up, and that little itty bitty glue is just going to be enough to hold this together. Okay, so that's one strip. So you can see the size difference in the two of them. This one I put a lot more on, and this is just one strip. So it really just depends on the size of the piece that you want in order to tell you how much to do. Okay, so now you can see how that pops out. I have a little bit of Scotch tape here, and we're talking like a tiny little piece I'm cutting off that I'm going to use to just kind of help hold that together while I put my next strip on. So I find that that works really well for when I just want to let go of it. So if you're done with that piece and you want to make another one, you can just put a little piece of tape on it and leave it on the side, and that works great. You can use masking tape, nobody's going to see it. Okay, so if I wanted to continue making the small one larger, I would get another strip and soften it up a little bit and throw my bead of glue on there. I was using a glue stick, and I found that the glue stick got all over my fingers while I was doing this, a lot more so than this, which is surprising. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to wrap it around. Now, one thing that I tried to do is not to get the ends in the same spot on this, so as I wrap it up, it'll just be a little bit more secure. So you just want to tighten it up and wrap that around. You know, if it's a little loose, it doesn't really matter. It's going to hold together no matter what, and it's going to create that spiral. So sometimes if you just hold it for a second, it'll be enough to hold it together. And if not, just take that little piece of tape, stick it on there, and then you can even take the tape off later if you don't want it on there. It can just be to just help it like glue together. So if I wanted a bunch of these, I would just continue making them, and if I wanted them the same size, I just use the same amount of pieces of paper with that. Okay, so that's how you make the spiral. The next thing I'm going to do is make a heart shape. So it's going to have to be done in a couple different stages. And you just have to really think about what you want this to look like when you're done, and that'll help you to shape it. So I started by making a little piece here, and that's going to be like one of my sides to the heart. Okay, so I'm going to take another strip, and just like before, just soften that up a little bit, and put my glue on it. And I was just thinking about the fact that a heart is going to look like this. So I want to start in the center by creating two pieces of folded in the center, attaching them together, and then starting to go around the outside. You could also do one big piece on this side and one big piece on this side and attach them together. So I'm going to start it by just folding this down a little bit, and then as I kind of bend it over itself, I'm just making it get a little bit longer as I do that, because I kind of want it to be even with the other one when I'm finished. Okay, so there's like two components, if you can think about that as being the heart shape. So I think what I'm going to do, since this is the first time I'm actually trying to make this, is I'm going to start to go around here and around here and around here and around this one. So let's take another strip, and again I'm using the thicker ones because I don't want this to take forever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little glue on what I just started with and add on and go around like this. And I think I'm going to cut that when I get over there. So I'm going to put this around, and now I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to go back to where I started, and I'm going to take that same piece and I'm going to bring it around. And this side is going to start to grow for me. Get a little bit bigger each time. Hold it in place. And then cut that off. So I can keep using that same strip a few times in order to start to make that side. So I think I can get around one more time with that. So I got about 3 around there with the one piece. And you can kind of see how this end is getting a little bit rounded as I go, and I'm still keeping that like point in there for the size of the heart. Okay, so I think that's going to stay. I don't need any tape. So I'm going to do the other one. So I'm going to get another strip, loosen this up a little bit, and just start to go around. And it's a little bit more pointy on this end, so I'm going to use that for the bottom section and let the top curve. So I'm putting my glue on, wrapping this around, just kind of hold it on there. And I'm really letting the top be a little bit loose and rounded. Shape it as I go. And cut this off. Put another a little bit of glue. Wrap it around. And I'm being a little loose with it at the top because I want that to curve. And I'll cut it off. And let's do one more with that. Oh, see, that didn't make it around, but that's all right. It doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, so let's just hold it again. And I'm going to continue with that. That's going to open up, but I'm just going to grab another strip because I want that to be a little bit bigger. So this is actually a good thing because now, since I ended like in the middle, I want to start over here, so I kind of push that down. So I'm going to get a little drop of glue under there and on that side, and I'm going to take my new strip and put it like across here, so it kind of helps hold that together. And I'm going to go around, try to round it out a little bit, and then cut it off. So it's a good idea to kind of keep track of how many strips you do. And the bigger this gets, the less I'm going to get out of what I'm using. So I think that at this point, I'm probably going to need a new one because this is too short. So I'm going to let that, I'm going to just put a little tape on that. I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and I'm going to go back to the other one. So I'm trying to make these even. So you can kind of see how that's going to come together, all right? All right, so let's work the other one a little bit, and then we'll try and put them together. But it's going together pretty quickly. So it's going around. I already had some glue on there, so I'll do that again. Okay, so now it's kind of coming together. Now I probably should attach the two together. So let's put some glue between them. And one is a little shorter than the other, but I don't think that's really going to matter. So I'm going to kind of hold that. And I think what I'm going to try to do now is go around the entire thing because I need something to help hold this thing together. So I'm going to put some glue all the way around. And just lay it on the table. And maybe I'll take one of the thinner ones now because it's going to bend easier. And I'm going to go around and I want to crease it so it goes down in that crack there. So get it in there, bring it around, and I'm going to do that again. So you may have to hold that a little bit to get that to stay. Even with the Elmer's glue, it does stay kind of quickly. So I'm going to go around again to kind of just seal that up so that it holds. And you just have to push that in. So this is starting to come together. If you find a better way, I'm going to cut that tape off. If you find a better way to make them, then go ahead. You guys show me how to do it. I'm just looking at the shape of that and how I'm going to get that to work. So, you know, you could do three of the spirals, 1, 2, and then a small one, and then kind of go around the outside. Whatever design you do on the inside is going to be, you know, partially what makes up your pattern. Okay, so I went around the heart a couple more times, and I'm going to put that aside as another component. And now we're going to do something where it looks as though it's curled up. So let me just show you on my screen. So if you look at this, it looks like they're all like rolls that are cut next to each other. So we're going to do that next. Okay, so I'm going to take a full page and I'm going to kind of just start to roll it up from a corner here. I want to do it on a diagonal. And the hardest part is going to get it going. There we go. Once you get it started, it's going to just roll up. And you don't even need any glue in here. You kind of want this to be a little tight. And just kind of roll it up as tightly as you can keep it. And just keep going. If it's too thick, you can do a half a sheet. I'm just going to do a full sheet here. And as you go, you can put a little glue in there just so it holds for you while you're working. I'm going to keep going. Try to keep it tight. Maybe put a little piece of glue in here. Okay, so that's making kind of a large tube. And we're going to get to the end and kind of seal that up. So you can use this in a lot of ways. You can cut these after it sets up and set them side by side. If you find that, I'm going to get that tape again so I can put it down because that's really helping me, even if I want to take it off later. So I have that tube. So if you want something that's a little bit thinner than that, let's cut the paper in half, but on a diagonal, so that it still gives me kind of a wide piece. So it's going to be a lot less paper when I roll this up. But, and again, I want to keep it tight when I start. And put a little glue. So whatever works for you as far as how you're working. You know, this is still going to kind of, I could get like a cone too if I make it a little wider. Nothing says you can't experiment with what you're doing. Flatten this out, fold it this way. You know, what is going to work for the design you're doing. You know, you could even now roll that up somehow and it'll give you like a different type of a spiral. I'm going to fold this in half now. Try and get a tighter roll. I think we needed something a little bit stiffer, there we go, to keep it narrow. That's better. So the double layer of paper actually works better for that. Much better. Okay, so now if I seal that up and after it sets, I could cut these into, this is what I was trying to do, I can cut these and I can lay them next to each other to make like a repeated kind of a pattern. So I'm going to use a bunch of these different things in the frame that I actually put together, but I'm just kind of trying to show you different techniques at this point. Okay, so there's another one. Okay, so now we've got these tubes, we've got some larger tubes, we've got the spirals. Now let's do, those are all solid kind of looking, right? So let's do one that has like a hole in the center. So I'm actually going to roll it around a pencil. So if you put the pencil on the table and put some glue not right where the pencil's going to start and roll it up around that, but keep it a little loose because you want to be able to get it out. So there we go. So once you do it against the table, you can just kind of roll the pencil, and this is going to give you a spiral effect, but it has an opening in the center. Alright, so I'm going to get my tape, put that on, and then take my pencil out. So now you've got one with the hole in the center. Depending on what size of the thing you roll around is going to depend on how big of a hole you get, or and how big your spiral is. So I'm going to do this around this highlighter, but I'm not going to do it too tight because I want to get, there we go. So it's a good idea to kind of move it and make sure you can get it out. So I just roll that right up and then put a little piece of tape to hold it. I think I'm kind of cutting off the tape as I'm finishing things later, but you can see how cool that looks now. And you can even leave the tape on and just like I've been snipping it off on the edges. So I can use those, so I can use these components in like together, you know, like imagine that I was creating my frame and I wanted to have them next to each other. You know, I could kind of attach this together. So you're going to design this the way you want. And I would think about like if you want multiple components that are the same, just keep making them. You know, make a bunch of them so that you have them the same size. You can add on to the outside of this, just like we did with this, by just taking another one and adding it on and just rolling it up around the outside just to make it bigger. So you can do it however you want. I'm just kind of giving you ideas here on how to go about putting things together. So now this is larger, but I definitely think the tape thing is a good idea because it allows you to be able to put it down. Now, if you wanted to attach these together, you could also go around them again. So if I were to glue this together, you know, I have this piece and I like the way that looks, I could go around the outside of them with another piece, just like I did to hold this together. And like you can see already that that's really gluing itself together. So I think I'm going to do that next. All right, so I'm going to attempt to attach these together. Now, think about this, that this is going to come into play when you work with anything, but you know, if you don't have a big connection point, things are not going to hold. So if you push it and make like a little bit of a flat area, that's going to glue itself better than if you have something like this. So I'm going to kind of just flatten out that little edge, put a little glue on that to get it going, and then just leave them on the table. And then I'm going to put this other piece on there as on the end, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to give it a little flat spot so that it has a little bit more of a place to glue itself together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my thinner strips, just because, like I said before, it's a little bit more flexible, and I'm going to go around the outside of this to try and attach all of those three together. So I'm going to just put this on. It's going to take a little maneuvering to do this, but I'm going to go around. You could also wait until the glue sets on these three things, and then they won't move on you like it's moving on me. But since I'm making the video, oh, let's do it like that. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to do it like this instead of pushing it in right now. I'm just going to kind of go around the outside and get those three together. So if you want it enclosed, you can push these in. If you want it to look like there's a space in there, you can just leave that. So that's a good starting point. And now I'm going to take a thicker one and go around again with that. So remember, you know, the glue has to set a little bit, so it doesn't take very long to set, as long as you don't use a ton of it. The more glue you put, the longer it's going to take to dry. So that's why I've been using just a tiny bit as I'm working, because I've noticed that it really will help hold the whole thing together and dries kind of fast. Okay, so now I have this piece kind of attached together. Of course, it still has to set up, but I can use that somehow, and maybe it will, you know, go next to this piece and attach to that. You know, we are working within a frame which you have your pieces, but maybe, you know, maybe that is going to go like that on my piece, or maybe I'm using it this way. So you're looking at your drawing and you're going to figure out how these components are going to go together. You don't necessarily have to glue this to this because you're going to glue it down to your frame, but you, if you have something like this, you know, you got to think about how they go together when you're kind of building this. Okay, so next one is going to be some kind of a star or a flower kind of a pattern. So the best way to make something like that is to fold down the size that you want, the distance of the petal or the point on your star, and then just continue to fold it over to make, you know, a crease. Then what you do is open it up. Now I wanted my center of the star open, so I'm not going to glue the first section together. So I'm going to fold that down and then put a bead of glue across the rest of it. And then I'm going to seal it back up. And what that's going to do is, you can just push it on the table, is it's going to open up the center a little bit so that you can have the space in the middle. And you could have, you know, you could have a small spiral in the middle if you wanted, you know, as a, looks like an eye, but you can do something like that to kind of keep that open. You could leave it spaced out, it's up to you. So I have a bunch of them that I already made to show you how that's going to work. So if I took those and I glued them all together, you know, I get this cool kind of a shape here. But you could use them independently, it doesn't matter. And when after they were dried, I just kind of like gave them a little pull. So if you wanted less and you wanted to make it wider, that's all you have to do. Just kind of make your piece wider, and then you could break it down to a lot less parts. There, so there's the same, that's more of a star. You just have to shape it a little bit and you just glue your pieces together. This one's a little small. So, you know, a lot of this is just looking at the type of pattern that you're trying to create and look back at the PowerPoint as far as what I made, what I showed you, and, you know, what's going to give you, how are they putting it together? Just kind of look at it. And all of these different ways that I've showed you should come into play. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to weave something together. Okay, so I have 5 strips here, and I could have them touching to make it a tight weave, or I could space them out. So I have them all going the same direction. So if you're going to weave, you're just going to alternate over under. So I'm just going to start it here and just kind of lift those 2 up and put that in. So I do need to kind of glue this together. So anywhere they connect, you can put the glue. So I'm just going to put a drop before I put my next piece on. And it doesn't have to be every single part that I glue together. So I'm going to leave it as an open weave. And now this one is going to go underneath the ones that I didn't go under prior. And it's going to make kind of a cool effect. This is good for like filling in spaces. There we go. You know, if you wanted to put a piece of colored paper behind this, that would look kind of interesting because you'd see it through the gaps that you're making, and you can push this together as tightly as you want it just by getting it set up and then putting your glue on there. So I'm going to glue this. In place, and then just get it set. So if you glue all of these parts together, you can cut this after it's dry, and that's kind of interesting too, because then you can have a section of it. So I'm going to go under these 2 and over the others. So it's just alternating. I'm going to put glue on all of my spots this time so that I can cut it apart and use it. Now this is just white because of the type of page that I had. So this would kind of look cool if I had some kind of a color behind this so that it it came through the openings. So I may use this in my design after I'm done. So I'm just going to put one more on. There we go. I've got to think about which way it goes there. That one goes under. Okay, so you can see how that's kind of creating a cool woven thing. Remember, colored papers, from the newspaper works cool. You know, I just gave you some materials, but you could use whatever you have as additionally to make something interesting. Okay, so just a few ideas from me. Have fun with it. Be creative. Look back at the PowerPoint and look at ideas and try and figure out how things were done by looking at them. All right? Go have a good time. Bye.